heard you crying loud all the way across town. Been searching for that someone, it's me out on the prowl. As you sit around feeling sorry for yourself. Well, don't get lonely now, and dry your whining eyes. I'm just roaming for the moments, these my backyard's don't get so uptight. You start thinking about ditching me. No time to search the world around, 'cause you know where I'll be found when I come around. When I come around.
Hello and welcome to Choice Conversations. I'm your host, Chris Stefanik. So today, for the first time since the very first episode of Choice Conversations, I do not have a guest. Though this is just a solo cast, me talking to you. And what I had in mind for today's show is I wanted to tell you about some dream analysis that I recently did. And I thought it would be a good illustration of how I combine multiple tactics, multiple strategies around like self-awareness and communication, and get some synergies by using these different strategies and working together to really make improvements in my life and increase my inner harmony and learn about myself. So first of all, it all starts with when I go to bed, right? That's a prerequisite before you can have a dream, which having a dream is a prerequisite to dream analysis. So when I go to bed, the first thing I do is I do some affirmations, or I learned these from the book The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. He calls them prayers in there. Since I'm not actually praying to a deity, I'm more just changing my thoughts. Or if I'm praying to any kind of deity, it would just be my inner Jesus, my inner Buddha. You know, am I praying to my subconscious mind to use its power to change my life? But yeah, these are commonly called affirmations in the world of spiritualism and meditation and positive thinking and things like that. So I did a whole podcast on positive thinking recently with Anthony Samaroff. So if you've not listened to that, I encourage you to check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. And we go into a lot of detail about just how powerful positive thinking is and some ideas about how to get it started in your life. So my affirmation, my prayer when I lie down, I get my body comfortable. I take some deep breaths, clearing my mind and just focusing on my breath. So this would be very much like meditation. So that's actually probably the first thing before I'm even getting into affirmations is I'm doing a very brief meditation here to just still my mind. And that's probably only like 3 or 4 breaths. And then I say, tonight I'm going to have, well, I don't say this out loud, I'm saying it in my mind. So I think the thoughts, tonight I'm going to have a great night's sleep. I'm going to sleep soundly. I'm going to sleep through the night without interruption. My dreams are going to be pleasant and insightful. This sleep is going to give to my body, mind, and spirit everything it needs, so that when I wake up tomorrow, I will be fully rested, refreshed, restored. I will have health, youth, vitality. And then I like to just close it out with a short repetition. I say, I am going to fall asleep quickly. Tonight I'm going to have a great night's sleep. And then from that, I go into relaxing my body. Sometimes I don't even make it through that, and I'm asleep. That's one thing I've noticed since I've started doing this. I fall asleep so fast. There used to be times, it was pretty regular, at least once or twice a week, or I would lie in bed for an hour or two. Sometimes, 3 or 4. But yeah, at least once a week, an hour or two there, I would just lie there and not be able to fall asleep. And most nights, at least, 10, 20 minutes or so, if not an hour, I almost never make it out of this good night prayer, this affirmations, and I'm knocked out. I sometimes don't even make it through that first part. I often do, but I almost never make it through this next part. So this next part, I just relax my body through an affirmation. So I would then say, my feet and toes are relaxed. My calves and shins are relaxed. And I kind of do each one of these with a breath, and like breathe in, and as I'm breathing out, I think the thought, my thighs are relaxed. And I just kind of work my way up through my entire body, to even my face and my mouth and jaw. And I finally, after I've done all that, I say, take a breath. My entire body is relaxed. My mind is relaxed. And like I said, it's very rare that I even get to that point. At that point, if I'm not out by then, I'm out pretty shortly after that. And I actually had to reverse the order. I used to do the relaxing the body first to get me in a really nice relaxed state, and then do the prayer, tonight I'm going to have a great night's sleep. I used to do it in that order, and what I found is I was just never making it to the the part where I'm like, tonight I'm going to have a great night's sleep. So I reversed that order so that I could get that part in, and get my mind on the track I want it to be on as I'm going into sleep, to be restorative to my body and spirit. And the one part, if you noticed, in that was I said, tonight my dreams will be pleasant and insightful. Before this, I wouldn't say I was like haunted by bad dreams or plagued by bad dreams or anything like that, but I would have bad dreams occasionally, like anyone. And sometimes these could be very disturbing and the like. And since I've started saying that, I almost never have a bad dream. Once in a blue moon, I still will have a bad one, and it's always my subconscious mind is trying to tell me something, and it's really important when it does happen. And we can get into that, how I know that what it is it's trying to tell me. We're getting into that in a few minutes here, but there's something really wrong if I get a bad dream, like every time. It's not just some random thing. So, but I say my dreams will be pleasant and insightful. And just about every night I have insightful dreams. So I've made this a part of my daily routine. So then when I'm sleeping, what I do is I keep beside my bed on the nightstand, I have a pad of paper and a pen. And if I wake up and I was just dreaming, I jot down a sentence or two to help me to remember what that dream was. Because if I don't do this, quite often I just don't remember my dreams. So, I might remember a dream once a week or twice a week if I don't write it down, at best, when I wake up. That's at best. But if I write it down, then I almost always remember it. So, and then the next key piece is, when I wake up, that is the time to do the dream analysis. So, actually, I don't go straight into it, like while I'm still lying in bed. I want to wake up a little bit, because if I start doing dream analysis while I'm still lying in bed and just woke up, I'll tend to just drift off and go back into sleep. So what I actually do is I do a little yoga in the morning to help me wake up. So this is something I learned from Hunter Clark Fields. I know that she occasionally has meditation retreats, like virtual retreats online, and I attended one of those, and it was really, really good, and learned some excellent things that I've implemented in my life, and I encourage you to check that out. Thank you, Hunter. She's been a guest on my show before, so I'll put that in the show notes as well, the link to when she was on. So I'll get up, I'll do some stretches, and while I'm doing these stretches, by the way, I've started, this isn't something from Hunter, but I've started doing some affirmations for the day while I'm doing my stretches, like, today is going to be a great day. I have a positive attitude. I have a smile on my face, a twinkle in my eye, a skip in my step. I'm motivated and driven. Today I will accomplish a lot. I will keep one eye on priorities so that I'm always working on the highest priority item given the current context. Meaning like what I have available in front of me. Obviously, I'm not going to be, if one of my highest priorities is meeting with a client and that client's not available till 3 p.m, I'm not going to be sitting there worried about that, given the current context. But at any rate, you get the idea. I have an affirmation I say while I'm doing my yoga stretches to kind of set that. And actually, before I even get into that, one of the very first things I say when I'm doing my stretches is, I am awake and alert. I am fully rested, restored, renewed. I am healthy, young, and full of vitality, and so on. But after I do these handful of stretches and my morning quote-unquote prayers, I will then lie down and do my dream analysis. And the important thing about doing it now is sometimes I would wait till later in the day to try it. And this is a bad idea. You want to try to do it early in the morning. You want to maybe do a little bit to wake yourself up. But I would say within that first half hour of waking, you want to go back into your dream analysis. The problem is you will forget it the longer you wait. So, I've had numerous times, where I didn't do it in that first half hour, and maybe in the afternoon I sat back down, okay, let's do my dream analysis. I pull up my pad of paper, I read the couple sentences on there, and I say, I have no idea what that dream is about. I do not know why I wrote those sentences. I don't remember writing them. I don't know what that means. I haven't the foggiest. So, and I think there's actually like a biological reason for this. I've read somewhere that when you wake up, the biological processes that are kicked off when you awaken, it signals some kind of process in your brain that causes you to not remember your dreams. I don't know if that's true or not, but I remember hearing it somewhere, and it certainly seems to be my subjective experience that, shortly after waking you forget your dreams, and that seems to be pretty common. So at any rate, do it as soon as possible. So I will lay down. I like to lay down flat on my back, either on the floor. That's my preferred place. You could do it on a bed or a couch as well. I kind of like the floor and just being completely flat. And you could even do like the yoga corpse pose or shavasa or something. I'm probably pronouncing it horribly wrong, but I think it's something like shavasa. But I find that to be extremely comfortable, that pose. And again, I would start like a meditation, like a 30-second, 1-minute meditation where I'm just taking some deep breaths and clearing my mind of other thoughts and focusing on my breath. I will sometimes even say the affirmation at the very start. I will say, I've cleared my mind of thoughts. I will now put my thoughts in focus on my breath. And then I sit there and do 3 or 4 breaths, do 30 seconds or whatever, to just relax and get in tune and feel my body relax. And then I start the affirmation. My dreams are pleasant and insightful. Take another breath. I'm a master of dream analysis. And I usually repeat it one more time. I'll do another breath. My dreams are pleasant and insightful. I'm a master of dream analysis. So now I'm ready to tackle the dream. At that point, my mind is primed to handle it. And so the next thing I do is I sit there and I go, I tell myself, I recap in my mind all of the details of the dream that I can remember. So I'm going to walk you through a dream I had recently, and then we'll get into the analysis portion after that. So this dream I had recently, I was riding with my father. He was driving. I believe it was a truck or maybe a Jeep. He was driving this truck, and we were on an island. And I kind of felt like it was maybe the Hawaiian Islands, because it was definitely volcanic islands where you could look towards the middle of the island, like to one. If I looked out the passenger window, I could see the volcano, going up and away. If I looked to the left out the driver's side window, you could see the beach. And we were trying to get around this island, right? And we're driving around the edge of the island. We're, going around the circumference of the island. And I remember like seeing ahead that the road was flooded. And, I'm like, Dad, we can't go through that. And we're not going to make it through that. Are you kidding me? The road's flooded, right? And he's like, we've got to go that way. There's no other way we can go. And I remember like looking at a map. I was, his co-pilot. I'm looking down at the map, and I could see like, because this was a volcanic island, and it wasn't a very big one. If you can imagine this, as you go inland, you're going up the mountain, right? And so there was basically the only road that really went around the island was on the edge. And from that, you would see there would be little roads going in the island, up the mountain, up the volcano. And then maybe they branch off a little bit to the sides, but the terrain was too rugged when they'd branch off to the sides to keep going around the mountain. It was basically all the buildings and homes and things like that were on these roads where if you drove inward towards the volcano. But if you wanted to get around the island, and we were trying to get to our hotel or resort or whatever, the only way to do it was to stay on this road that was on the outer edge, and this was where it was flooded. Of course, if you went took the roads, if you turned to the right and went up the volcano, the roads were not flooded because you're going to higher ground at that point, right? And I'm just like, maybe we can't get to the hotel today, but we're going to have to wait for this flooding to clear, right? We need to pull off and go up to higher ground, and maybe we can find a place to stay here or whatever until the water clears or whatever. And my dad wasn't hearing it. He just kept on driving. So we hit the water, and I can feel the tires leave the ground. So, that was a scary feeling. And all of a sudden, I can see my dad turning the wheel, left and right, and the car is just going with the current. It's just drifting. It's not. His steering is having no effect, and I can see ahead. We're very quickly heading off the road and towards trees. And I could see my dad is like desperately trying to steer to get us to go between the trees, not hit the trees, right? But we're floating. The steering wheel is having no effect. This isn't a rudder on a ship. This is no effect at all. And there was some nervous moments and panicky as I'm like, oh my God, we're going to end up crashing, And then I woke up. So I woke up, jotted down a few sentences on my paper, went back to bed. But at any rate, this is me. We've already did that part. Sorry. So at this point, this is me recapping the dream, right? In the morning. So I'm recapping every detail of it. And I then said, at this point, I'm basically talking to my subselves. So for those of you who are not aware of what subselves are parts. I did a podcast on this on interfamily systems therapy with Jay Early, and I will put a link to that as well. So the concept behind interfamily systems therapy is that within the human mind there are several components where it's not really like one entity. It's more like a team or a family where there's multiple components to your personality. So like a great example of this would be like a lot of people have an inner critic. Like they'll hear a voice in their head it'll be like, boy, you're so stupid. I can't believe you did that. You knew better than to do that. What's wrong with you? So that's a really common one that in the IFS, interfamily systems, and IFS circles, that's called your inner critic. I mentioned my inner Buddha, my inner Jesus, or whatever. I actually have a sub-self that goes by, that could be classified as like an inner Buddha. Some of the IFS experts, the researchers and the like, call them higher powers or whatever, but it's a part of your inner family that has a lot of wisdom and guidance for you. Nathaniel Branden would probably call it your sage self. So there are these different parts, and they're basically, for the most part, as best I can tell, they are internalizations of people around you, especially during your formative years. So you would internalize these people around you, or a more accurate way of saying that would be you internalize certain parts of the people around you, right? So at any rate, I recap the dream in my mind, giving all the details, and then I ask this question to my subselves, to myself. These subselves are me. It's not like they're actually separate from me. but they are all of them together make up me. So, but I will ask, I will say, what did that dream mean? And quite often, I will just instantly get an answer of like what it means. One thing I found with dream analysis is just like anything, the more you practice it, the better you get at dream analysis. So in the beginning, maybe it would be I would get some useful advice from my dreams, or I'd be able to figure them out, maybe every other night, or every other dream, or something like that. Now, I will usually have 1 or 2 dreams a night, sometimes 3, to analyze, and probably 4 out of 5 out of 6 of them, I get really valuable information from. So my subconscious mind is telling me things that I should be worried about, saying if I'm off course, it's helping me to course correct, that sort of thing. It's very, very useful advice, and it's not very relatively rare that I have a dream that I'm not able to really find anything useful from it. So, like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the easier it comes. So, but I will ask, what did that dream mean? And I will often just get an answer right away. If I don't, I'll probe a little more. I'll say, okay, well, what does this part of the dream mean? So, like, what did my father represent in this dream? And often the answer will just come right into my mind. They represented this. In this case, it represented one of my subselves that I had not yet been introduced to. So, but if that doesn't work, I can also just start speculating. I'm like, oh, did that represent a subself? And I'll get a yes or no right away. And then, okay, yes, okay. So what did what was the driving? What was the Jeep? What was that all about? What did that mean? Maybe I don't get an answer, and then I'll speculate. And I'll say, okay, did my father grabbing the wheel represent this subself taking control of me? If you will, grabbing the wheel of my mind, my body, my person, if you will. Did that represent that happening? And when this happens, a loss of control. And I get the answer back, yes. So, I kind of go through this process, and I can tell you some of the other tactics that I use as well. If I'm still stumped, which usually, often, right from the beginning, I just say, what does a dream mean? And instantly I have the thought what it meant, But yeah, sometimes you have to dig a little deeper. If I get to this point where I've done all this and I still am not really sure what it is, and then I'm not really getting answers, I might call out to some of my sub-selves. So I might talk to my inner Buddha specifically and ask him. Or actually, I mentioned an inner critic. I had an inner critic. My inner critic is now taken on a new role. He's no longer critical of me. So, and he's now a very high-functioning member of my inner family, and has a new role that he's really happy with and that I'm happy with. It's really helped to create inner harmony in me, to meet my inner critic and to find a new role for him that was more helpful. And it just so turns out that my inner critic, or who was formerly my inner critic, tends to be like the best one at dream analysis of my sub-selves for whatever reason. So I'll ask. His name's Cornelius. That's the name he gave himself. So I'll say, okay, Cornelius, we're kind of stuck right now. Do you know what this dream means? And maybe, sometimes he'll answer me, yeah, I know, or, well, I do, but I'm kind of being blocked right now by maybe another sub-self. And the way I can get around these blocks, like one sub-self may not want me to know about what this dream meant, right? So one of the ways that I can get around that is Nathaniel Branden. He has sentence stem exercises, which are really wonderful for increasing your self-knowledge, and they're basically like journaling exercises. It's things like, let me think. If I could be 5% more positive today, and then you just complete that sentence, and you would complete it 5 times, 10 times. You would just keep completing it until you had no more completions left. So, if I could be 5% more positive today, I would get a lot of things done. I would have better relationships, or I would be a better parent, that sort of thing. And there's all kinds of exploratory sentence stems, and he's got several books of them, and plenty of them are available online for free. If you just search for Nathaniel Branden sentence stems, you can find them. I know that Wes Bertrand, who's been on the show several times, has on his happiness counseling website, on the resources page, he's got, I believe the book is called The Art of Self-Discovery, which has a whole slew of these questions where you can dig into your self-knowledge by going through these journaling exercises, these sentence stems. Well, one of the things that Branden talked about is, after you've done this for a while, you can use sentence stems on the fly, make up your own to troubleshoot an issue, right? So he would do this with his clients. When his clients would come in, he'd just give them sentence stems on the fly, that would match whatever it is they were talking about to really quickly and efficiently get to the root of the problem. Very, very powerful tool, extremely powerful. Well, I found it's really powerful for getting a sub-self to open up that's maybe it's being blocked, maybe it's a little uncertain, or for whatever reason the sub-self isn't talking to you. If you give it a sentence stem to complete, at least for me, they open right up. They'll sit there and complete the sentence stem. So in the example here, I would say to Cornelius, complete the sentence stem. In that dream, my father represented, and then he would go through and complete it. And then if he was being blocked, he would be able to get past it and be like, my father represented a sub-self. My father represented a sub-self that you haven't quite yet met, or that sort of thing. So these are ways that I get synergies by combining multiple tactics to get things done. So at any rate, I learned from this dream that I had a sub-self that I had not met, that was at some times taking control, taking the wheel. And in IFS circles, sometimes you'll hear this called blending. They will blend and basically take over. So your true self, the part that ideally is the one that's at the wheel the majority of your life, your true self is the part of you that has a really good grasp on the big picture of everything in your life, where a lot of times the other sub-selves might have a very narrow vision. They're really concerned with one aspect of your life, but don't have the big picture in mind, or maybe they don't have as long of a view in mind, where your true self has an eye on the long term as well as the short term, and can make good evaluations. Okay, these actions that I'm taking right now are good for me in the long term, or good for me, maybe they're good for me in the short term and the long term, or whatever it is. Your true self is the one that's highly skilled in running your life and being a leader for your other sub-selves. So taking the valuable input from your other sub-selves and using that to help guide the decisions with your best interests in mind, with the big picture in mind, with the long-term view in mind, etc. But when other sub-selves take the wheel, they call that blending. Sometimes bad things happen. So I found out there was this sub-self that was taking the wheel. And, so I said, please introduce yourself. And it appeared before me in my mind, and it went by the name of Donnie Bosco. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, Donnie Bosco, I feel like I know that name, but I don't know what that is, And we'll get back to that in a minute, what that name means. But Donnie Bosco, and what it turned out after I talked to this sub-self for a while, and some of it, what I used, I remember the sub-self was really angry, and I used nonviolent communication. So I've talked about nonviolent communication several times on the show, and I'll go ahead and link some podcasts to that where I went in more detail about that. But nonviolent communication, it's about empathy and acknowledging the emotions in other people, and having a lot of presence, and not judging them in any kind of moralistic way, So I acknowledged this sub-self, Donnie Bosco. I acknowledged the anger he had. I'm like, boy, you're really angry right now. Is that because of this or because of that? And I was able to get him to open up and to kind of lower his emotional levels and be like, yes, that is why I'm angry, and it's interesting. It's kind of like you see with kids. Kids will, this is why NVC is such a great tool for parenting. Kids will be like throwing a fit, and if you try to dismiss it, be like, they just throw a fit even more, or like maybe they've hurt themselves. This is one that's really common: fall and scrape a knee, and the parent will be like, "Oh, you're not hurt, shake it off," and they just like cry louder. No, I am hurt, But if you say to them and you acknowledge it and be like, "Oh, that looked like that really hurt," I could see that you're in a lot of pain. Wow. And instantly they kind of calm down from that. They're like, maybe the crying doesn't stop on the spot, but you could see the emotion level visibly drop when you just acknowledge their experience. This is empathy, right? So I was using empathy, I was using MVC, and got this sub-self to open up to me. And what I found was that this sub-self was an internalization of my father. It was interesting that in the dream, it actually presented itself as being my father. It was an internalization of my father, but specifically the part of my father that was an authoritarian parent, that was very strict and about discipline, and would get angry, and was very concerned with respect. And you will not talk to me in a certain way. That's not showing me respect, and would get very angry when that would happen. And so there would be times when I would be parenting when I would get angry, and I would really lose the ability to use the parenting tactics that I've learned, that I talk about in this show, and things like nonviolent communication, things like parent effectiveness training, which I've talked about a number of times. These things work great, but I would not even have the ability to do it, and it would turn into an authoritarian parent. I would go caveman on my daughter, just be like, start yelling, and afterwards I'd feel terrible because I'm like, wow, man, I just lost it. I don't know why I wasn't able to do what I know I should have been doing, And I found out it was the sub-self that it would take the wheel. Now, my true self would have known to use parent effectiveness training or nonviolent communication. But this sub-self, which didn't have the big picture in mind and wasn't as holistically healthy as my true self, would take the wheel, and then I would I'd become this authoritarian parent. I would very much so become my dad. So this is how the cycle of parenting continues. Most people parent just like they were parented. It's because they unknowingly absorb these personalities. They internalize their parents, and they might not even realize that they internalized it. I mean, they almost certainly don't realize it, and it may not even come out until they have kids of their own. They might think they're really different from their parents, and maybe in a lot of ways they are. But then when they go to parent, they end up parenting just like their parents. You'll even hear them say things like, "Boy, I got so mad at little Tommy the other day, and I was yelling, and afterwards I was like, man, I sound just like my dad, or I sounded just like my mom. I couldn't believe it looking back on it." And it's because of this. You very much inherited, that part, the parenting part of your mother or of your father. You internalized it, and it will come out when you're parenting. And if your parents didn't use the most effective strategies for parenting, the most nurturing strategies that they could have, this isn't good. You need to become aware of it, and if you want to improve and give your children a better, more nurturing environment than you had, you need to become aware of this, and through whatever tactic it might be. There's all kinds. I'm not saying that IFS therapy is the the only way to self-awareness. I know journaling is great, and a lot of people like that, and meditation, and Nathaniel Branden's sentence stems work is not IFS work. There's some relation to IFS in the works of Nathaniel Branden. Like, he talks about the child self and the teenage self and the sage self and things of that nature, but it's not exactly IFS work. It's just loosely related, I would say. But I think you can really gain a lot of self-knowledge going through Nathaniel Branden's work, and I'm sure there's other work out there in the field as well of psychology that can help you to gain that self-awareness that you need. But you're going to have to do the work, or you're just going to end up repeating the cycle. So at any rate, I used nonviolent communication to talk to this sub-self and get to learn about what they were. This was an internalization of my father. What they felt, what were the times when Donnie would take the wheel. What were the times when my true self would be disabled? And I also was using, like, whenever they would get stuck, I would give this sub-self the sentence stems as well. I would use nonviolent communication. I would give them sentence stems, and just so fast I was able to diagnose this situation and really get to know this sub-self, and really help heal the sub-self and bring it into my family, and so it was a peaceful member living in harmony with the other sub-selves and with my true self, and not taking over the wheel. Like, once I started working with it, I think like that day it was like the last time that it blended with me, and just so fast was able to make ground. And it was interesting talking to it. It was not pleased at all with how its parenting was going. When it would take the wheel, it didn't feel like it was effective, but it didn't know what else to do. And I said to it things like, I said, okay, so when you yell at our daughter, do you think that's going to help her to respect you? Do you think you're earning respect that way? Because it was very concerned about respect, and he said, no, I don't think so at all. Respect has to be earned, and it's not something you can't demand respect from someone. You can only be earned. And I said, well, what do you think would be a way that you could earn respect? And I don't remember the exact words, but it was essentially by modeling good behavior. And when we talked, and he said, what would be much more effective than yelling and authoritarian parenting would be empathy, like you showed me with nonviolent communication, would be kindness and compassion, and that was really important to him, because he also had, my father could be really, really kind and compassionate, when he wasn't being an authoritarian parent, and this sub-self also had that part to him, and it was really sweet talking to this part of me, and remembering the kindness and the good times I had with my father, and just how caring and cuddly he could be, how he was, probably more often than he was being, strict and angry and yelling, So it was really neat and warming to meet that part of my father. For those of you who aren't aware, my father passed away, when I was 16, so 24 years ago. So, but it kind of was really heartwarming for me to get to kind of, in a real sense, experience my father again, even though he has been gone from my life for 24 years, and feel that love that he had for me, and to see the love that he has now, not just for me, but for my daughter. He never got a chance to be a grandfather to my daughter, but in a way he is still being a grandfather to my daughter through me. And so we talked about this, what you're doing isn't actually a good way to accomplish what it is that you're concerned about. We talked, it was more than just like getting respect. There was things like security for the family, be that security like from intruders, or living in a safe neighborhood, things like that, to as well as just financial security and things like that. And I said, well, for financial security, do you think I'm going to be better at my job if I come in, if I allow things to trigger me and get angry, or if I'm take a more compassionate accepting and empathetic stance when I'm dealing with clients or coworkers or things of that nature? What do you think is going to help us to be more financially secure? And he's like, no, you're right. You're right. It's what I'm doing isn't going to get us there. So he said, how can you help me to do this? How do I change? I don't know how to change. Well, I said, there's this thing that I really like called affirmations. You can change the way you think. I've changed the way I think through exercises, controlling my thoughts, doing meditation. Meditation is the practice of controlling your thoughts. So then once you have mastery over your mind and can control your thoughts, you can choose what thoughts you're going to think. And instead of thinking thoughts of anger and disrespect and the like, and failure, you can now choose to think thoughts of compassion and kindness, of empathy and acceptance, of wealth and abundance, whatever it is, health. You can set your mind on the right track, which, thoughts lead to actions, which leads to outcomes. So you can have virtually anything you want in your life if you can first get your thoughts there. So I worked with this sub-self on doing some affirmations, on doing some positive thinking exercises. So, I would say, repeat this after me. I am kind and compassionate. I am empathetic. I am accepting and tolerant. I am a great father, etc. I would have him do some. Okay, you do some now, and you might say things back like, I love the other sub-selves. I love you, the true self. I live in peace and harmony with the other sub-selves. I am a valuable member of the family, of your inner family, those sort of things. And, I would check back in periodically. The next day I would check back in. For the next week or two, I would check in periodically and just see, and it was like a total change. He was much happier. He wasn't angry anymore. And he's like, yeah, I'm really having success with this. And I noticed it when I wasn't doing parts work. I would notice that I wouldn't get triggered by my daughter. I wouldn't go caveman on her. If she was doing something that I wish she wasn't doing. My tolerance, my patience were tremendously greater. My ability to sit there and empathize and not have anger take over and disable my ability to be a good parent. That wasn't happening anymore. Now I was, in the face of these things that in the past had triggered me from my daughter, I was now able to stay calm and to really try to connect and be present and empathize with her. And it was just such a profound thing, and happened so quickly, and it was just through some dream analysis. It's like it's on one hand it was just so simple, just doing some dream analysis. On another, it does sound kind of complex because I'm throwing out like all these different strategies. I'm throwing out meditation and affirmations and nonviolent communication and Branden's sentence completion exercises and you name it. There's all these different things, but through that work, through one dream, analyzing that dream and healing the wound that it exposed. This dream showed me to some inner healing that I needed to have done. But then, listening to that dream and doing the work to heal that wound, I had dividends paid off of that almost instantly in my parenting, almost instantly in the increased amount of joy in my life, the increased amount of peace and harmony and tranquility, and the good times shared with my daughter. And now I'm modeling better behavior for her. How much more is that going to help her? I mean, forget the respect that she has for me from that, and think about just how valuable that will be to her as she's going to learn from that behavior, learn from the modeling I'm doing, and be able to, when she's around other people who are exhibiting high levels of emotion, to be able to talk to them and be present and empathize with that, rather than just be triggered and have her emotions escalate and then disable her true self, disable her ability to choose how she wants to act, choose how she wants to respond, instead being a stimulus response machine. Before this, one of the things that would trigger Donnie to blend with me was when my daughter would be exhibiting strong emotion. Maybe she would be really upset about something, and pretty quickly it would escalate to the point where now I was upset. That was one of the things that triggered it. Now I'm modeling better behavior for that, and those are skills she's going to pick up on and be much better prepared to be successful in life and to be happy in life and have successful relationships and the like. So really, really good stuff. An interesting little sidebar at all of this is afterwards, remember I was like, Donnie Bosco, man, I feel like I know that name from somewhere, but I'm not sure, but I can't place where I know that name, So I went to Wikipedia and looked at Donnie Bosco, and apparently this is a famous Catholic priest from, was it the 19th century? It was a while ago. He was involved in education and the like, and even after I read the Wikipedia page, I was like, you know what? None of that sounds familiar. I still haven't the foggiest idea where I got Donnie Bosco from. But I'm like, clearly, somewhere I had heard something about this, and that was the name this part chose to identify itself with. I thought that was interesting because, first of all, as a Catholic priest, my father was a devout Catholic man his whole life. A Catholic priest, you call them father. That is the correct way to address a Catholic priest, is Father Donnie. And here, this was my father, that he was an internalization of my father. So I thought that was just really interesting. I'm like, man, even now, after having read it, I swear I'd not heard that name before, but yet somehow I knew it. And this part of me chose that as the name for itself. It was just kind of an interesting thing. But so now, I get dreams like this all the time. Literally every day on the average, I have it. Because like I said, occasionally I'll have a morning where I don't have any dreams that I remembered. But there are days when I have 2 or 3. So, on the average, it's at least 1 a day. So, really, really powerful. And it's always, when I'm successful at analyzing the dream, which is the majority of the time, probably 5 out of 6 times, I get a good message from it. It's always something that is very wise. That it's that where I was typically making a mistake, or an area where I could do a little better, or maybe something I wasn't seeing, a danger that was approaching that I wasn't seeing. Like a quick example, I had a dream much more recently than the one about Donnie Bosco. That was probably a month or 2 ago. This was just like 2 or 3 nights ago. I had one where I was getting a haircut with a friend, and we walked in the salon and we were waiting for our turn, and somebody who was getting their haircut got up and paid and left, and like, okay, now it's our turn, we're next. And the stylist was like, who's next? And these people that just walked in, we had been waiting, for 10 minutes or something. These people that just walked in, cut right in front of us and said, we're next, and went and got their haircut. My friend was really pissed and was like, should we go up and say something, and I woke up from that dream and I did the dream analysis. And what it was about is, they said the haircut represents taking care of yourself. In this case specifically, it represents doing parts work. And it said, you're allowing some other things in your life to interfere with you doing parts work. And at the time, I hadn't done any parts work for maybe a week or 2. Parts work is interfamily systems therapy. It's like one of the exercises you do to work with your parts. It's they call it parts work, to work with your subselves. And I hadn't been doing it lately, and there was basically there was some other subselves who were distracting me into other areas that were doing things that were not as high of a value as doing parts work would be. It was like, basically they were saying you need to take care of yourself. You need to make sure that you're setting your priorities right and setting aside some time, if not every day, most days, to do a little parts work. And I said, hey, thanks for letting me know that. You know what? You're right. I've been letting it slip. And what's more important than spending time with myself and increasing my healing and increasing my peace and inner harmony? There's not much in my life that's more important than that. And there was these other things that were tremendously less important than that I was putting ahead of it. And so this dream clued me right into that. Just a little course correction here and there. And I get those from my subconscious mind. That's where these dreams are coming, every night. And just the little course corrections. And, the subconscious mind is very powerful. It's, they say it's like 7,000 times or whatever the number is, 40,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. And it's able to see these things that your conscious mind isn't seeing, to pick up on patterns and evaluate risks and evaluate behaviors and, look at the odds of things happening and to see what would be a better course for you and to give you these course corrections. You just have to be open to receiving them. At any rate, that was longer than I expected it to be. I thought this would be a 20, 30-minute podcast, and it's gone quite past that. But I thought that it would be good to give you an example of how I'm implementing these things in my life. I'm doing podcasts on all these different things, and I don't know how much you're really seeing it. What does that look like in Christophonic's life? And I thought this dream was a perfect opportunity to show just the power of the different tactics and how they're even more powerful when you combine them. The synergies that you get using them together. That individually they're great, but if you can actually master several of them and then combine them, there is no limit to the enlightenment you can bring into the success you can have in all areas of your life. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that. Take care.
I heard it all before, so don't knock down my door. I'm a loser and a user, so I don't need no accuser. Try to slag me down because I know you're right. So go do what you like. Make sure you do it wise. You may find out that your self-doubt means nothing was ever there. Can't go forcing something if it's just not right. Time to search the world around, 'cause you know where I'll be found when I come around. When I come around. Let's go! To search the world around, 'cause you know where I'll be found when I come around. When I come around.